The Great Hall of the Galactic Conclave was older than human civilization itself. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 100,000 years. Light moved through them like slow water, casting rainbow shadows across the floor. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. It was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Ambassador stood at the center of the hall. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with the flag of Earth on her shoulder. Behind her stood 3 other humans. They were the only ones of their kind in a room filled with aliens. Around them sat the 12 elder races. They floated in columns of light, their bodies made of crystal and energy. The collective clicked and hissed from their section, their insect-like forms covered in black armor. They sat in massive chairs built for their giant bodies. Each race had ruled the stars for longer than humans had walked upright. The High Arbiter floated at the head of the chamber. It was a being of pure thought, trapped inside a glowing prism that hung in the air. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Humanity," the Arbiter said, "you have been called before this conclave to answer for your actions." Kept her face calm. She had prepared for this moment for months. Human diplomats had worked hard to build relationships with the elder races. They had traded technology. They had shared culture. They had done everything right, but she could feel the hostility in the room like a cold wind. "We are honored to be here," said. "We hope to address any concerns the conclave may have." A sound came from the section. It might have been laughter. The ambassador, a creature with too many eyes and sharp mandibles, leaned forward. "Concerns," they said. "You spread across 12 star systems in 300 years. You breed like parasites. You dig into every planet you find and drain it dry. These are not concerns. These are crimes." Felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. "We have followed all treaties. We have only colonized worlds that were marked as unclaimed." "The issue is not what you have done," said its voice like singing glass. "The issue is what you will do. We have watched young races before. Most burn bright and die fast, but your kind is different. You do not slow down. You do not stop. In 10,000 years you will outnumber all of us combined." "Is growth a crime?" asked. The chamber went quiet. The High Arbiter pulsed with light as it processed the arguments. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with finality. "The conclave has reached a decision. Humanity is found guilty of uncontrolled ambition. Your expansion threatens the balance of galactic civilization. You are too young to understand what you are doing. You are too dangerous to be allowed to continue." His heart began to beat faster. "What is the sentence?" "Exile," the Arbiter said. "All human beings must leave conclave space within 100 cycles. You will relocate to the outer void, beyond the rim of the galaxy. Any humans who remain after this period will be removed by force." The words hit like a physical blow. The outer void was a death sentence. Everyone knew it. There were no healthy stars there, no planets that could support life. It was where the galaxy sent things it wanted to forget. "You cannot do this," said. Her voice shook now. 12 billion people live in our colonies, children, families. You are condemning them to death." "We are giving you a chance," the ambassador said. "It is more than you deserve." Looked around the room. She searched for any sign of sympathy, any ally who might speak for humanity. She found nothing. They looked away. They had already closed their eyes. Even the races that had traded with humans that had called them friends sat in silence. This had been decided long before she arrived. The trial was just a show. Something changed in his eyes. The fear left. The desperate hope left. What remained was cold and hard like iron. She had spent her whole life believing that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. She had been wrong. "I understand," she said. Her voice was calm now, too calm. "We will leave as ordered." The High Arbiter seemed surprised by her acceptance. "You do not wish to argue further." "What would be the point?" asked. You have made your choice. You have looked at humanity and seen a threat. You have decided to throw us into the dark and hope we die quietly." She paused and looked at each of the elder races in turn. "But I want you to remember something, all of you." She stepped forward. Guards from 3 different races tensed, but she stopped before they could act. "We came to you with open hands. We asked for nothing but a place among the stars. We offered friendship, trade, alliance, and you responded with fear and exile." Her voice grew stronger. "You think you are removing a problem. You think that in 100 years no one will remember the humans. You are wrong." The High Arbiter flickered. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" Smiled. It was not a warm smile. "It is a promise. You will remember this day. You will remember the moment you decided to turn 12 billion people into enemies. And when that memory comes back to you, I want you to know that you had a choice. You could have been our friends. Instead, you chose to be our executioners." She turned her back on the conclave. Her 3 companions fell into step behind her. The great doors of the chamber opened, and humanity's ambassador walked out into the light. Behind her, the elder races sat in uncomfortable silence. A few of them shifted in their seats. The arbiter's glow seemed dimmer than before. "She is just angry," the ambassador said. "In a generation they will be dead. The void kills everything." The representative was quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke, its voice uncertain for the first time in centuries. "What if it doesn't?" No one had an answer, and deep in the crystal walls of the ancient hall, words seemed to echo long after she was gone. On the human ships waiting in orbit, word of the verdict spread fast. There was anger. There was grief. Some people wept. Some people screamed at the showing the beautiful conclave world below. But Ambassador did not cry. She stood at the window of her shuttle and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, past the edge of everything known, the outer void waited. It was supposed to be their grave. She would make it their forge instead. The great exodus began on a cold morning on Earth. Ships rose from every continent carrying families who had packed their entire lives into small bags. Children pressed their faces against windows and watched their home planet grow smaller and smaller until it was just another dot among the stars. 12 billion people had to move. It was the largest migration in human history. The rich traveled in comfortable vessels with artificial gravity and fresh food. The poor crowded into cargo ships that had been converted into living spaces almost overnight. Some ships were so full that people slept in shifts, sharing beds with strangers. Admiral commanded the Exodus fleet from the bridge of the Defiance. It was the largest vessel humanity had ever built, nearly 10 kilometers long, carrying 500,000 people in its metal belly. Was a soldier who had never lost a battle, but this was not a battle. This was a retreat, and it broke his heart. "Admiral," his second officer said, "we have confirmation. All human ships have cleared conclave space. The deadline was met." Nodded slowly. He could see the border markers that separated civilized space from the unknown. Beyond them lay the outer void. No elder race had traveled there in thousands of years. The maps simply showed empty blackness. "Take us across," ordered. The fleet moved forward. Thousands of ships, carrying every human being in existence, crossed into exile. Behind them, the lights of the galaxy grew distant and dim. The first year was hard. The second year was worse. The outer void was exactly as terrible as everyone had feared. The stars here were old and dying. Most gave off barely enough light to see by. Planets existed, but they were frozen rocks or toxic wastelands. Radiation storms swept through space without warning, frying electronics and making people sick. Disease spread through the crowded ships. Food ran low because the growing systems failed in the strange light of dying stars. People began to lose hope. Some ships reported fights breaking out. Others went silent entirely, their crews dead from starvation or despair. On the Defiance, Admiral called a meeting of every leader who could attend by video link. Scientists, engineers, doctors, soldiers, politicians, anyone with skills that could help. "We have 6 months of food left," he told them. "Maybe 8 if we cut rations again. After that, people start dying. I need solutions." Doctor was a young physicist who had been studying energy systems before the exile. She raised her hand nervously. "The dying stars," she said. "Everyone thinks they are useless because they give off so little light, but they still produce enormous amounts of other energy: radiation, heat, gravity. If we could build collectors that harvest these instead of light, we would have more power than we could ever use." Some of the older scientists shook their heads. "That technology does not exist," one said. "Then we invent it," replied. Admiral looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it. Whatever resources you need, you have them." It took 2 years and cost many lives, but succeeded. The first void harvester was ugly and dangerous, but it worked. It pulled energy from a dying red star and converted it into clean power. Suddenly, the fleet had electricity again. Lights came back on. Machines started working. Hope returned. But food was still a problem. Traditional farming needed healthy sunlight, and there was none to be found. A biologist named Samuel proposed a radical solution. He would modify crops to grow in radiation instead of light. He would change human bodies too, making them stronger and more resistant to the harsh conditions of the void. "You are talking about changing what it means to be human," a council member protested. "Yes," Samuel agreed. "Because the old kind of human cannot survive here. We must evolve or die. I choose evolution." The modification programs were voluntary at first. Parents could choose whether their children would be enhanced. Most chose yes. What parent would deny their child a better chance at survival? The first generation born in the void was different. Their bones were denser. Their eyes could see in lower light. Their bodies processed radiation that would have killed their grandparents. They called themselves the void-born, and they were proud of what they were. 20 years into the exile, humanity found its first real home. A planet orbiting a brown dwarf star, barely warm enough to have liquid water. It was ugly and dark and harsh, but it was land. Admiral, now an old man, stood on the surface and felt alien soil beneath his boots. "We will call it Defiance," he said, "after the ship that brought us here." The colony grew fast. Humans had always been builders, and now they built with desperate energy. Cities rose from the rock. Factories hummed to life. Schools opened so that children could learn not just how to survive, but how to think, how to create, how to dream. And in those schools, teachers told the story of the exile. They showed pictures of Earth, of the beautiful worlds humanity had been forced to leave behind. They explained how the elder races had looked at humanity and seen only a threat to be eliminated. "Remember who did this to us," the teachers said. "Remember the conclave, remember the arbiter, remember thee and all the others who sat in silence while we were condemned." The children listened. They remembered. Admiral died 30 years after the exile began. By then, 5 colonies existed in the void, with a combined population of 3 billion. In his final message, broadcast to every human settlement, he spoke words that became sacred. "I was there when they cast us out. I saw the contempt in their eyes. They thought they were sending us to die. Instead, they sent us to become something greater. The darkness did not destroy us. It made us strong. And one day, when our children's children return to the galaxy we were forced to leave, the elder races will learn what humanity can truly become." He closed his eyes and passed away peacefully, surrounded by family. Outside his window, the dim stars of the void burned with promise. Humanity had survived its first test. Now it was time to grow. In hidden shipyards, a new generation of vessels was being built. These were not refugee ships or cargo haulers. They were warships, sleek and deadly, designed by engineers who had spent decades thinking about revenge. The Conclave thought humanity was gone. They had already started to forget. They did not see the lights growing in the darkness at the edge of their maps. They did not hear the whispers of 40 billion voices, united by a single purpose. We will return, and we will never be exiled again. 100 years passed in the galaxy like a slow dream. The elder races continued their ancient routines. They traded goods and argued about borders. They held ceremonies that had not changed in 10,000 years, and slowly, surely, they forgot about the humans they had sent to die. In the great libraries of the exile of humanity became a small note in a history book. Students learned about it the way they learned about extinct species or dead stars. It was something that had happened long ago, something that no longer mattered. The collective celebrated what they called the cleansing decision every 50 years, but even they grew bored with the tradition. The younger did not remember why it was important. They only knew that some primitive race had once threatened the natural order and had been dealt with appropriately. On Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Conclave, a new generation of arbiters rose and fell. None of them had been present when humanity was condemned. The prism that had delivered the verdict was placed in a museum, a relic of a minor historical moment. The galaxy was at peace. The galaxy was comfortable. The galaxy was blind. In the outer void, humanity had become something else entirely. The United Human Dominion now controlled 23 worlds. 40 billion people lived in cities that had been carved into asteroids and built on planets that should have been uninhabitable. They had not just survived the darkness, they had conquered it. Doctor, now an old woman with white hair and steady hands, stood before the greatest achievement of her life. It was a machine the size of a small moon, floating at the edge of a black hole. The machine hummed with power that should have been impossible. Zero-point energy, she explained to the council members who had come to witness the test. We are pulling power directly from the fabric of space itself. With this technology, we will never run out of energy again. Every ship, every colony, every weapon will have unlimited fuel. The test was successful. The void lit up with new power. Ships that had once taken years to cross between stars could now make the journey in days. Humanity's reach expanded overnight. But technology was only part of the plan. General, commander of the Dominion's military forces, had spent decades designing a new kind of warfare. He was a hard man with cold eyes who had been born on a refugee ship during the first terrible years of exile. He remembered hunger. He remembered fear. He remembered his mother telling him stories about the beautiful worlds they had lost. Traditional weapons will not work against the elder races, he told his officers. They have had thousands of years to perfect their defenses. Every attack they can imagine they have prepared for, so we must attack in ways they cannot imagine. His solution was the phase drive. It allowed ships to slip out of normal space and travel through something else, a dimension that the elder races had never discovered. Ships equipped with phase drives could appear anywhere without warning. They could pass through shields and walls as if they did not exist. They were ghosts made of metal and fire. The first phase ships were built in secret, hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids where no sensor could find them. Personally, oversaw their construction. Each ship was a work of deadly art, designed for one purpose only. While the military prepared for war, spies prepared the ground. Human agents had been infiltrating elder race societies for 50 years. They used genetic modification to disguise themselves, changing their appearance to blend in with alien populations. They took jobs as servants and traders and minor officials. They watched. They listened. They learned. Agent Diana Cross had lived among them for 30 years. She appeared to be a low-ranking energy being, barely worth noticing. But every night, she transmitted reports back to the Dominion about politics, military strength, and internal conflicts. The "The conclave is weaker than it appears," she wrote in one report. "The elder races hate each other almost as much as they hated us. They believe they are too soft. The Empire resents taking orders from beings they consider inferior. They trust no one. They stay together only because they are afraid of what would happen if they split apart. Fear holds them together, and fear can be broken." Similar reports came from agents embedded in every elder race civilization. The picture they painted was clear. The conclave was an alliance of convenience, not conviction. Under enough pressure, it would shatter like glass. In the capital station of Prometheus, hidden in the accretion disk of a black hole where no enemy could ever find it, the High Council of Humanity met to plan the future. High Commander Sophia presided over the meeting. She was the granddaughter of the ambassador who had stood before the conclave and promised that humanity would return. Sophia had grown up hearing stories about her grandmother's final days, about the fire in her eyes when she spoke of justice and revenge, had died believing that she would never see the galaxy again. Sophia intended to honor her memory. "Our military is ready," General reported. "We have 3,000 phase ships crewed by soldiers who have trained their entire lives for this moment. Every officer knows the history. Every soldier burns with purpose." "Our spies are in position," the intelligence director added. "When we strike, we will know exactly where the enemy is weak. We will hit those weaknesses before they even understand they are under attack. And our technology surpasses anything the elder races possess," Doctor said. She was too old to fight, but she had trained a generation of scientists who would turn her inventions into weapons. "They have not innovated in 10,000 years. They have been living on the achievements of their ancestors. We have been forced to invent or die." Sophia listened to all of them. Then she stood and walked to the great window that looked out at the swirling light of the black hole. 150 years ago, my grandmother asked the elder races for friendship. They answered with exile. They sent 12 billion people into the darkness because they were afraid of what we might become. She turned to face the council. They were right to be afraid, but their fear made them stupid. They could have had us as allies. Now they will face us as conquerors. She pressed a button, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared in the center of the room. It showed every elder race territory, every major world, every defensive position. Red dots marked the targets that the Dominion's first strike would hit. "In 3 months we begin the return," Sophia announced. "We will not ask permission. We will not negotiate. We will take what should have been ours from the beginning. And when the elder races finally understand what is happening, it will already be too late." The council members rose to their feet. Some had tears in their eyes. All of them felt the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders. For 100 years, humanity had been silent. Now they would speak with fire and thunder, and the galaxy would listen. Commander Al of the Collective Navy stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the planet 7 turn slowly below. It was a peaceful world, a trading hub where merchants from a dozen species came to exchange goods. Nothing interesting ever happened here. "Commander," his sensor officer said, "I am detecting strange readings at the edge of the system." Al clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Strange how?" "I cannot explain it. Space itself seems to be bending, like something is pushing through from somewhere else." Before Al could respond, the universe tore open. Ships appeared from nothing, dozens of them, hanging in space where empty void had been moments before. They were sleek and angular, painted black as the space around them. On their hulls, a symbol burned in white light, a human hand reaching upward toward the stars. "Impossible," Al whispered. The human ships did not wait. They did not send warnings or demands. Weapons that they had never seen before fired beams of pure force that passed through shields like they were made of paper. The first warship exploded before its crew even understood they were under attack. Al screamed orders, but his fleet was already dying. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind vessels and destroying them from angles that should have been impossible. The battle was not a fight, it was a slaughter. On the surface of 7, human soldiers materialized in the streets. They wore armor that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. They moved with perfect coordination, taking control of communication centers and government buildings before anyone could raise an alarm. 14 minutes after the first human ship appeared, Commander Al's flagship was burning. He managed to send one final transmission to the Conclave before his bridge collapsed around him. "They are back, the humans. They are back and they are everywhere and we cannot stop them. May the ancestors forgive us." Then there was only silence. News of 7 reached Nexus Prime 3 hours later. The High Arbiter, a being called who had held the position for only 200 years, could not believe what it was hearing. "Humans," it said, "that is impossible. They were exiled to the outer void. Nothing survives there." "The reports are confirmed," its advisor said. "Human forces have attacked 12 systems simultaneously. Border defenses are collapsing. We are receiving distress signals from every sector." Pulsed with agitation, "Contact the Conclave members. We must coordinate a response." But coordination was easier said than done. They demanded that their core worlds be defended first. The Empire refused to send ships to help claiming that the insects had always been arrogant and deserved what was happening. They announced that they were sealing their borders and would not participate in any military action. While the elder races argued, humanity advanced. High Commander Sophia commanded the invasion from the bridge of the Prometheus, the greatest warship humanity had ever built. It was 10 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack planets. She stood before a wall of screens showing the progress of her fleets across the galaxy. "The border sector is secure," General reported. "Resistance was lighter than expected. Their technology has not improved in centuries. Our shields absorb their weapons with ease." "Move to Phase 2, Sophia ordered. "Begin the push toward the home territories. I want their crystal cities shaking before they even understand what hit them." The invasion was not random. It was a surgical strike designed by intelligence analysts who had spent decades mapping every weakness in the Conclave's defenses. Human fleets avoided strong points and hit supply lines. They destroyed communication relays and left enemy commanders blind. They appeared from phase space in locations that should have been impossible to reach, striking at undefended targets before vanishing again. The UV fell after a 3-day siege. Human soldiers walked through crystal forests that had stood for 100,000 years. They did not destroy them. They simply raised human flags at their centers and moved on. The Empire tried to mount a counterattack. They assembled the largest fleet in their history, 5,000 warships commanded by their greatest admiral. They met a human force of only 500 ships in the system. The battle lasted 1 hour. When it was over, the fleet was debris, and human ground forces were landing on the capital. The giant warriors who had conquered 100 worlds found themselves facing human soldiers who were faster, smarter, and armed with weapons that made strength meaningless. As world after world fell, the stories spread. The humans did not slaughter populations. They did not burn cities. They accepted surrender and treated prisoners fairly. But they also showed no mercy to those who fought. Entire armies vanished in the blink of an eye, destroyed by weapons that worked on principles the elder races could not understand. 3 years after the first attack on 7, human forces surrounded Nexus Prime. High Arbiter stood in the chamber where humanity had been condemned so long ago. The crystal walls that had witnessed centuries of conclave rule now vibrated with the sound of distant explosions. Human ships filled the sky above, so many that they blocked out the stars. "We must surrender," an advisor said. "There is no other choice. Our fleets are destroyed. Our allies have abandoned us. If we fight, they will kill us all." "And if we surrender?" asked. No one had an answer. The doors of the chamber exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, their weapons raised and ready. They moved with perfect discipline, securing every corner of the room in seconds. Behind them walked High Commander Sophia. She was tall and strong, with dark hair pulled back from a face that showed no emotion. She wore simple combat armor with no decoration except for a small pin on her collar. It was a human hand reaching toward the stars, the same symbol that flew on every human ship. Recognized her immediately. The intelligence reports had described her well, the granddaughter of the ambassador who had promised revenge. High Commander said, trying to keep its voice steady, "Perhaps we can negotiate." "No," Sophia said. The single word cut through the air like a blade. She stepped forward until she was face to face with the floating prism that housed the Arbiter's consciousness. 150 years ago, my grandmother stood in this room. She came as a diplomat, seeking friendship. Your predecessor looked at humanity and saw only a threat to be eliminated. So you sent 12 billion innocent people to die in the darkness. Sophia's voice grew colder with every word. We did not die. We survived. We grew. We became something that your stagnant civilizations could never imagine. And now we have returned to take what should always have been ours. Flickered with fear, what do you want? Everything, Sophia said. Your surrender, your submission, your acceptance that the age of the elder races is over. She turned and activated a holographic projector. Her image and voice were broadcast to every screen and speaker across the planet, across the system, across the entire galaxy. To all citizens of the Conclave, she announced, the war is over, your governments have fallen, your fleets are destroyed. Resistance is futile and will only bring more death. But unlike the Conclave that condemned my people, we are not here to commit genocide. We are here to build a new order. She paused to let her words sink in. Surrender now and you will be treated fairly. Your cultures will be preserved. Your people will be protected. But make no mistake, the galaxy now belongs to humanity. You had your chance to share it with us as equals. Instead, you tried to destroy us. Now you will live under our rule. The transmission ended. In the great chamber, the last High Arbiter of the Conclave dimmed its light and spoke the words that ended an era. We surrender. Sophia nodded, wise choice. Outside, human flags rose over Nexus Prime. The Conclave was dead. The human dominion had begun. 5 years had passed since the fall of Nexus Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Where once the Conclave had ruled with ancient tradition and cold indifference, now the human dominion brought something new, something different. On the station Prometheus, deep in the heart of what had once been the outer void, the greatest ceremony in human history was about to begin. The Grand Hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Crystals floated beside warriors. Giants stood next to diplomats. Representatives from all 12 elder races and hundreds of smaller species had gathered to witness the coronation. High Commander Sophia walked slowly down the central aisle. She wore a simple white uniform that contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes of the alien dignitaries around her. Behind her walked the members of the Human Council, the leaders who had guided their species through exile and war. At the end of the hall stood a throne. It was not made of gold or jewels. It was made from the broken crystal of the old conclave chamber, the same material that had witnessed humanity's condemnation. Now it would witness their triumph. Sophia climbed the steps and turned to face the assembled crowd. Cameras broadcast her image to every world in the galaxy. Trillions of beings watched as she sat upon the throne and accepted a simple crown of dark metal. Today marks the beginning of a new era, she said. Her voice was calm and strong. For 150 years, we remembered. We remembered the fear in the eyes of the conclave when they looked at us. We remembered the coldness of their judgment. We remembered the dark years in the void when we had nothing but each other and our determination to survive. She paused and looked at the elder race representatives in the front rows. Many of them lowered their eyes. We could have done what you did to us. We could have taken revenge. We could have scattered your peoples across the universe and hoped they would die in the darkness. Some of our people wanted exactly that. A heavy silence fell over the hall. But we chose differently. We chose to be better than those who wronged us. Not because we are weak, not because we forgot what was done to us, but because we learned something in our exile that you never understood. Sophia stood and spread her arms wide. Strength does not come from crushing those beneath you. It comes from lifting them up. Unity does not come from forcing everyone to be the same. It comes from celebrating what makes us different. The conclave failed because it was built on fear and exclusion. The Dominion will succeed because it will be built on hope and inclusion. She announced the new laws that would govern the galaxy. Every species, no matter how small, would have representation in the new government. Trade would flow freely between all worlds. Technology that humanity had developed in the void would be shared with everyone. The age of hoarding knowledge and power was over. There will be justice, Sophia added, her voice growing harder. Those who committed crimes against humanity will face trial. Those who showed kindness during our darkest hours will be rewarded. We do not forget our enemies, but we also do not forget our friends. The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. During the exile, his people had hunted down human refugees who tried to hide in space. Now those same hunters stood in chains, waiting for their sentences. But beside him, a small creature from a minor race called the wept with joy. When humanity had fled through their territory, they had risked everything to help them. They had hidden families, shared their meager supplies, and asked for nothing in return. Now they had been given seats of honor at the coronation and promises of protection for their worlds. After the ceremony, Sophia walked through the celebration. She stopped to speak with beings from 100 different species. She listened to their concerns and promised to address them. She showed none of the arrogance that had defined the elder races for so long. Late in the evening, she found herself alone on an observation deck. The black hole that Prometheus orbited swirled slowly outside the window, its light bent and strange. She stared at it for a long time. Thinking about her, a voice asked. Sophia turned to see Doctor approaching. The old scientist moved slowly now, her body worn out by years of work, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. My grandmother, Sophia nodded. I wish she could have seen this. She did see it, said. She saw it the moment she walked out of that chamber. She knew that humanity would survive. She knew we would return. That is why she made her promise. Sophia smiled sadly. She said they would regret what they did. I wonder if they do. Some of them said, the wise ones, the ones who understand that they brought this upon themselves. She placed a thin hand on Sophia's shoulder. But regret does not matter anymore. What matters is what we do now. We have the power to shape the future of the entire galaxy. We can repeat the mistakes of the past, or we can create something truly new. Something better, Sophia agreed. In the weeks that followed, the work of building the new order began. Human administrators took over conclave bureaucracies and immediately began making changes. The old system of rigid hierarchy was replaced with councils where every voice could be heard. Economic rules that had benefited the elder races were rewritten to be fair to everyone. Not everyone accepted the changes. Some commanders refused to surrender and continued fighting from hidden bases. Purists claimed that being ruled by humans was worse than death. Small rebellions sparked across the former conclave territories. The Dominion dealt with these threats firmly but fairly. Rebels who surrendered were given amnesty. Those who continued fighting were destroyed without mercy. Within 2 years, organized resistance had collapsed. The message was clear. Humanity would be just, but humanity would not be weak. On the 10th anniversary of the coronation, Empress Sophia addressed the galaxy one final time. She stood on the surface of Earth, restored to humanity after more than a century and a half. Green grass grew beneath her feet. Blue sky stretched above her head. Behind her stood the rebuilt cities of the human, filled with people who had finally come home. "When we were exiled," she said, "they called us young and reckless. They said our ambition would destroy the natural order of the galaxy. They were wrong about our destruction, but they were right about our ambition." She smiled, and for the first time there was warmth in it. "We dreamed of a galaxy where every species could reach for the stars without fear. We dreamed of an order built on cooperation instead of domination. We dreamed of a future where the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Those dreams led us through the darkness. Now they will lead us into the light." She raised her hand toward the sky. "Let this be remembered. Let every child born in this galaxy learn the story of humanity. We were cast out. We were condemned to die, but we survived. We returned. And we transformed this galaxy into something the elder races never imagined possible. This is our domain now, not because we conquered it, not because we claimed it by right of power, but because we earned it through suffering and sacrifice and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. We are humanity. We were banished by the conclave, and we seized the stars themselves." The broadcast ended. Across 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size looked up at the sky with new eyes. The age of the elder races was over. The age of humanity had begun. And somewhere in the archives of Prometheus Station, a simple inscription glowed in the darkness. It was carved in 100 languages so that anyone who entered would understand. "We were exiled to die. We returned to rule. We built something greater. This is our legacy. This is our gift. This is the Dominion.